Hello and welcome to the Andy Edwards YouTube channel. And in today's episode, Andy will be telling you all about We Are the World, the big hit single that was made by Quincy Jones and Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson to make loads of money for the starving Africans. And here's the man himself. Put your hands together for Mr. Andy Edwards. We are, it's a bit low for me. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones that make a brighter day. So let's start giving. There's a choice we make. We're saving our own lives. Oh, it's true, you make a brighter day. Just you and me. Hello there, people out in YouTube land. How are you today? I want to tell you all about the song We Are the World. And the reason I want to tell you all about it is because I really hate that song. Like, I really hate it, okay? I hate Live Aid. I've already done a video on Live Aid. It's one of my biggest and most popular videos. But I didn't say much about We Are the World. And in a way, We Are the World is even more awful than Live Aid and all of that, okay? So on this video, I want to tell the story of We Are the World and then explain to you why I hate it and why I believe this song was made to turn us into little obedient music fan robots. Now, you might think that is preposterous, but I'm hoping by the end of this video, you might see where I'm coming from and why it did exactly that. Even if the people who made it didn't realise it, that was the outcome of this. It changed music. And it changed the fans from being people who were searching out rebellious stuff and countercultural stuff and stuff that was questioning the status quo to create a pop audience or rock audience or music audience who were complacent, and complicit in the plan to, ensure that the music business was there, not ruffling anybody's feathers, but making lots and lots of money. So, I'm going to try and tell you the story about We Are the World now. Now, there is a documentary on Netflix called The Greatest Night in Pop Music or Popular Music. It's something like that. It came out last year, about a year ago, and I watched it in preparation for this video. I thought this will give me all the facts. And I was so blown away by this documentary. And at one point I was in tears of joy at how wonderful it was. And so I have this great big split because I didn't expect to feel like this. Now, of course, this video may well go on for a long time. So, you might have to, take some breaks or something because I've got a lot to say on this one. And I think what I'm about to say will give an insight into contemporary culture, the last 40, 50 years of contemporary culture, and beyond that. And maybe show us now why we're in such a cultural, maelstrom of chaos. So, Bob Geldof, lead singer of the Boomtown Rats, British frontman, as his band's career was waning in the mid-80s, he watched a video that had come in of the starving people of Ethiopia, and he decided to do something about it. So he massed all his British pop star mates, and before you knew it, you had Bananarama and George Michael and Boy George and other people called George, all massed together with Phil Collins on drums, and they did a Christmas single called Do They Know It's Christmas? okay? And in that, what that song tried to do, and I've spoken about it at length elsewhere, I don't want to get bogged down to it here, but what it tries to do is make us feel guilty. It says, there you are, you're all happy, it's Christmas time, you know, you're enjoying yourself, and what about the people in Africa? They're not enjoying themselves, you know, you need to put your hand in your pocket. So it did the standard thing you would think that a charity single should do, is sort of shame you into going, this is really bad, I need to put some money in the thing. Now, the following year, Bob Geldof will pull everybody together and get Live Aid up, which to this day is the biggest concert in human history, and probably it's the mountain peak of the rock stroke pop epoch. So my thesis has always been that rock music emerges as it gets more sophisticated, it gets able to become more of an art form, and it climbs up this mountain to 1985. And 1985 is the summit of pop music, the summit of what rock music could do instrumental. It's back here around about 73. But the summit of it, you know, the peak in terms of its power culturally is in 1985. And then at that point now, it's going down the other side. And that's what Live Aid does. But I've never really considered the role that We Are the World plays in this thesis. So, Live Aid hadn't happened. For Live Aid to happen, Bob Geldof would have to go to America, a little bit like Winston Churchill did, to try and get them into the war. Okay? Now, it wasn't Roosevelt that was going to make that decision, but a figure who really instigates We Are the World, who is a legend in 20th century music and in 20th century political, in the civil rights movement, the American political power that had powered part of this great big explosion of rock and pop culture. And that was a singer called Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte was born in 1927. He came to prominence in the early 50s. He carried on in a tradition which was pre-rock and roll of being a sort of ambassador for Caribbean music and other, you know, Black American music, but especially Caribbean music. Is that the right? You have to be careful when you label these things. And he was very famous for the Banana Boat song. Hey, Mr. Carryman, carry me bananas. Daylight come and we wanna go home. Hey, Mr. Daddy Ban, pack me banana. Daylight come on and day to go home. Day up, day. One of the famous songs. I never liked the bit when the tarantula appears. You gotta watch out for the black tarantula. Bloody hell. Because I tell you something to digress, but this is what my videos are like if you haven't watched me before. I went out with a girl once and she went out and bought a bunch of bananas and they put it in the kitchen and then they went in and a tarantula was hidden in it and it crawled out and it was crawling across the work surface in the kitchen. So you know what they did? They picked it up like it was a normal house spider and just let it out the back door to go off roaming around the West Midlands of England, you know, causing all sorts of terrors. So, Harry Belafonte in the 1960s got involved in the civil rights movement, with, you know, marching alongside Martin Luther King. This is a legendary figure, a real legendary figure. And he's key to why We Are the World happened, I think. He looks at the Band Aid thing, the whole Bob Geldof thing, and he goes, he said it's good, you know, but he goes, this is white people helping the black people of Africa. Why you have to think in terms of this, I don't know, but that's what he thought. This is white people helping the black people of Africa. What about black people? And of course, in America, we've got loads of black people, and they're all pop stars. So where's Tina Turner? Where's James Brown? Where's Stevie Wonder? Where's all the black people helping it? So he starts to ring up a few people. And he asks Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder to basically write a song. Now, Stevie Wonder seems that he's a little bit of he's a genius, basically. And he's unlike any other pop star, which if you study the story of We Are the World becomes quite apparent. But he agreed to it, but they never really went to any of the writing sessions. So eventually, Lionel Richie rocks up with Michael Jackson, and they start to write this song together. Meanwhile, they've enlisted the greatest producer in the world, Quincy Jones. Now, Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson have just made the biggest album in human history. And all this is happening right at this peak where pop music and rock music and soul and funk, or whatever you want to call it, 20th century recording music, is a massive powerhouse. And that the people involved are like, they're the absolute legends of pop music. If you go to the early to mid 80s and pick up the biggest artists in the pop scene at the moment, you have the biggest artists of all time. But it's another interesting time because in the early 80s, the legends, the rock and roll legends, the early blues legends, people like Muddy Waters, were still alive. Harry Belafonte was still alive. They were all still there. Ray Charles, who had basically invented soul, had expanded gospel music into soul and funk and jazz. I mean, Ray Charles is in the top 3 most important people in the history of developing, you know, rock music, pop music, whatever. The other being Bob Dylan. And he's around as well. So these older artists are still alive. You know, Quincy Jones. This is why it's so incredible. Because these people are legends now. So they have this idea of bringing all these black musicians together, making this record. Then when they start to look at their connections, they realise they know people like Bruce Springsteen and they know people like Bob Dylan, and they start to ask them. And I think with Lionel, Quincy, Stevie Wonder involved, everybody says yes. Now, the big influence on this is Harry Belafonte. Everybody that is assembled in that room had incredible respect for Harry Belafonte, rightfully so. This is an utter legend. He trumps everybody in that room. Even though he never sang on the record, he trumps everybody in that room. And so they all start to assemble. They look at this logistically, and they realise that they're going to have to try and get all these legends together at the same time. And the Band Aid single had come out, gone to #1 at Christmas. This is now the end of January. They're 4 weeks in after that. The idea has been around for about 4 weeks. And people are like going, well, you know, how can we do this? Everyone's got schedules. Then they realise that Lionel Richie's been asked to host, I think it was the MTV Music Awards. And everybody's going to be there for that. So they start contacting everybody that's going to turn up to those awards with a plan of, they go to the awards, and when the awards is over, like at midnight or whatever, they'll shuffle them all over to this secret location, bang them all in, and they will record it all in one go. And it wouldn't be people one after other. Everybody's going to be in the same room at the same time. Quincy Jones does a genius job of producing this. And his idea is to bring them in. He writes on a piece of paper, check your egos at the door, sticks it up, and then he only allows the artists in. There's no personal assistance. And the thing is when you start to get these superstar legends all massing together, suddenly they're all on the same level. The roster of people he pulls together is possibly the most incredible lineup in the history of man on a record. So off the top of my head, who's there? Bob Dylan's in the room. Bruce Springsteen. Obviously, Lionel Richie, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder. Diana Ross is in there. We've got Cyndi Lauper. We've got Huey Lewis and the News. We've got Kim Carnes. We've got Steve Perry from Journey. We have got, now I'm remembering all the a little bit low down. We've got Paul Simon in there, of course. This is gone like the generation game now. Cuddly Toy, right? And I haven't got any notes for this, but these people will come. I'm not going to just sit here trying to bore you with trying to remember everybody that's in that video. Al Jarreau's in there, the great jazz singer. And Al Jarreau is technically possibly the greatest technical singer in the room. But the roster of singing talent is quite incredible. Tina Turner's in there. Incredible, right? So they bring them all in. All these people come in. And they have got around about 6 hours to get this done. And what this means is recording the chorus, and then once the chorus is recorded, then going through each individual vocal. And what they've done, and this is quite incredible, and this is what just blew me away, is the logistics involved and the power of the production machine in the early 80s to pull something like this off. Quincy Jones had worked with an arranger who had studied the records of all 40 singers, worked out where their key was, and worked out where their voices would sit next to each other. And then they'd been grouped in groups of 3. They would then deliver their individual vocals, throwing in harmonies over each other, and they would record each 3 separately, going across the room in a circle with their names laid out on the floor. So they wouldn't try and do all that in one go, but it would allow them to, like, let's do the take here, let's do the take here, and that was the plan. So this song's been written. Michael Jackson's come up with it. They've busted it out. Now, I'll have to say, with what I'm going to say later on in this video, I must make the point that Michael Jackson, who is the real driving force, I think, lyrically in the making of this. I mean, Lionel Richie, they both are, but these artists are both sitting on top of the world. And they've got a certain affinity with pop music, which is different to, say, Roger Waters or a Bob Dylan or a Patti Smith or a Lou Reed, okay? Or all these songwriters in the UK that were involved in the creation of Do You Know It's Christmas, who'd come out of a sort of post-punk new wave aesthetic. Midge and Bob Geldof, who wrote that tune, were quite happy to go, look, this is not right. Why is this going on? We have to do this. But it's interesting that what the song that Michael Jackson writes isn't like that, and doesn't really say that much about what's going on in Africa. It says that we are the world. It makes a statement about the world, but it's quite interesting that no one had the wherewithal or self-awareness to think that amassing these multimillionaires all in one world and then them all singing "We Are the World, We Are the Future" was a bit of self-aggrandization. But the thing is, this happened for a reason. It wasn't a conscious decision, but the subject matter of that song happened because of the zeitgeist at the time in America in popular music. With the collapse of all the sort of progressive music forms in the 60s and 70s, and a return to something more simpler, with punk on the one side and disco on the other, had brought around this sort of mass appeal. And Michael Jackson wasn't one really to be countercultural, bring down society. He's tried to sing in a holistic way, you know, and send positive beams of energy. But the awareness of who they are, that sort of postmodern position culturally wasn't there. There's a lack of self-awareness amongst these legends. So they all come in and they start up. Now, there's a couple of interesting things that happen in the session. Everybody's very nervous. Everybody's got one line to sing. And if you are sat there and you're like Huey Lewis or Cyndi Lauper, and you know that you're following it on from Stevie Wonder or Ray Charles or Tina Turner, that must be a stress. But if you're Tina Turner, you also know that you're singing next to Ray Charles and Diana Ross. And then you have these sort of virtuoso rock singers in there. And I would put Steve Perry from Journey in there. His one line that he sings is probably the most virtuoso line there is in that tune. But they're all incredible. I'm watching this, you know, and I got the one side is sort of my postmodern, post-punk, you know, went to art college, I'm old, but I still want to be on the cutting edge and criticising it and saying, oh, is it terrible, and putting it all down. But then there's the musician side of me that's just sitting there going, man, this is why they're legends, isn't it? And seeing how brilliant they all are. That's the thing for me. I'm watching it and I'm going, oh my God, they're all virtuoso singers. They're all incredible. They know what they're doing. They got one line, and the way everyone delivers it showcases them at the best, and the set serves the song at the best. In just one line. And everybody does it because they know who they are. And they stick to who they are. And they play that game. Tina Turner could hit high notes as you know, all day long. But the line she's got is low because she's got this rich voice in the low range. She kicks in like that. Cyndi Lauper just comes in with this incredible sort of high, shrieky voice, which is contrasting Huey Lewis, who's got this big throaty voice in the same way that Bruce Springsteen has. Springsteen's incredible. I know I've criticised him on this channel, but when he comes in, his voice is just incredible. And you can see what he's assimilated from not only people like Dylan, but from soul singers. It's just, I was just in heaven studying the genius of these musicians and go, well, this is why they're so great. This is why they're so great. They're all very nervous, except for Al Jarreau and Stevie Wonder. Those two are troublemakers. There's one point when you watch the documentary when Quincy goes, oh, we've got to watch out for Cyndi Lauper and Stevie Wonder because they're troublemakers. And they are. And Stevie's causing trouble all the way through. There's one point when they've got very little time and he suggests that they do it in Swahili. Now, this is a very difficult thing to try and pull off in a session with 40 singers. But they're trying to do this, and Quincy's trying to get it back on track, and he's going up to Steve and saying, look, they don't speak Swahili in Ethiopia. There's this big discussion going. In the background, they've got the legend that is Waylon Jennings. Now, Waylon Jennings, you can spot him in the video, I think, but he sat there and he goes, there's no way I'm singing Swahili. And at that point, he just walks out. He's gone. He jumped ship. Stevie Wonder is also, at one point, he sat chatting to Ray Charles, and Ray goes, oh, I really need to go to the toilet. Where's the toilet? And Stevie Wonder goes, don't worry, I'll show you. Grabs his arm and takes him off. And one of the superstars, as they watch him walking out, go, well, that's literally the blind leading the blind. Stevie Wonder just seems to be in there causing all sorts of trouble. Now, Al Jarreau, I don't think is a troublemaker, but he was enjoying being with everybody and partying. They're all enjoying everybody's company, and it's beautiful, and you could see how much respect everybody's got for each other. It really showcases what great artists are. At one point, Diana Ross goes up to Dowell Hall and says, will you sign my lyric sheet, my lead sheet? And he can't believe this because he's at that time was an up and coming sort of pop star, I suppose, and Diana Ross was a legend. But she loved him, and then they all start signing each other's. And I found it a very beautiful documentary full of love, because I know music is made out of love, and there's so much love in that room. I know it sounds cliched, but there is, and it's incredible. At one point, Ray Charles sits down at the piano and he starts to do a sort of gospel-y Georgia type of take on We Are the World. It's genius. Bob Dylan, surrounded by all these virtuoso singers, he forgets himself. He doesn't know how to do this. There's a shot of him in the documentary trying to sing along and trying to sing, and he doesn't know how to do it. He can't see his way through. Really interesting. And in the room, Dylan's an utter legend. Everybody's looking to him, but you can see he's not comfortable. So Stevie Wonder grabs him, and apparently Stevie Wonder was an incredible mimic. And he actually sat down and he sort of went, Bob, you should be doing it like this. We are the world. And then Dylan sees Stevie Wonder and he nods and goes, yeah. And he just, this big smile comes up, and then he nails it, and he bloody nails it. I got to be honest. What is it that I love about it so much? I tell you what it is that as you can tell, I'm a massive fan of 20th century popular music, rock, jazz, blues, and all that type of stuff. The black American music forms, I'm never comfortable with this because it doesn't really explain how much country music and gospel and how all these things are intertwined. And I suppose that's what it is. There's one bit when Quincy Jones, when he's finished the session and he's driving home, and he turns around to the guy and he went, wow, it's the white people really brought it. The white singers really brought it. Because in the end, everybody in that room is a part of this 20th century cultural phenomenon, which was music. And the jazz and the blues and the gospel and the country music and the funk and the soul and all these things, and the heavy metal and the rock and then the pop music and electro and all these things that emerge are actually coming from the same place. And that place is one of humanity, humbleness and love. That's what it is. And it brings everybody together. And so Michael Jackson's naive take on the song of We Are the World, We Are the Future, where he's imploring people to say, we are all the world. So we all need to work together to make a brighter day. And that simplistic sort of utopian view of the world, I commend it. And yet, at the top of the mountain, we have gone up to this point. This is about to crash and fall down the other side. We now live in a very postmodern, ironic, self critical, too cool for school. Make sure you got the right opinions. Make sure we're all too sophisticated, and it seems cheesy. And I know that the postmodern take I'm going to do at the end of this video is counter to what I'm saying here, and I'm trying to explore that. I was in tears. Now, the thing that made me burst out crying, because I am a blubber really, I get moved by this stuff very easily. Al Jarreau is a bit drunk. He can't remember his lines, right? He's best singer in the room, technically. I'm not saying he's the best singer objectively, but he's an incredible technical singer. But he's too drunk, he can't remember his lines, and they just about get his lines out of him. Then, in the midst of all this, with the greatest roster of talent ever assembled, he suddenly goes on the break, he goes, Day-o, day-o, daylight come and we want to go home. And then this room, 40 singers just come in, and then you can see the genius because they're harmonising. 40 singers together should sound like a rabble. It doesn't. It sounds like a choir. It's unbelievable. They're all singing this song in honour of Harry Belafonte, who is laughing but seems very moved. And I thought that all this star-studded, let's call people legends, let's call them this, let's put these people on the pedestal, it actually comes out of a great love of their talent, but also what they represent and what they went through. The reason why Harry Belafonte was so respected is because of his involvement with Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement and the fight that they'd gone through. Absolutely incredible. Anyway, so incredible thing. The single was done, finished, mixed. What's interesting that never gets mentioned is the lineup of musicians on there, which is a roster of the great sort of session jazz rock fusion musicians at the time. On drums, we've got J.R. Robinson, John Robinson, who played on Off the Wall and many Michael Jackson tracks. What is I won't go through any. I think it's David Piast from Toto's on there. Michael Martin or whatever his name is. There's a whole bunch of these sort of jazz fusion session legends. But for us Frank Zappa fans, there is a Zappa connection because on keyboards we've got Ian Underwood, who played on Hot Rats. I found that an interesting fact anyway. So that's the first half done of this. I've told you the story. The record comes out. It goes #1 around the whole world. It's all broadcast at the same time. Everyone tunes in to watch it. They watch all the legends. I think 1 billion people watched it when it premiered. It brings the Americans in, and now everybody's got to be involved. And so when Live Aid happens, it's virtually everybody. I mean, they list the people that didn't get involved. And I think Prince never got involved in Live Aid. Now, Prince, they were trying to get Prince so bad. And one of the things that's interesting is that they offered Sheila E. to be on the record, and they said she could sing a line, but it looks like they brought her in hoping that she would bring Prince in. Now, Prince wasn't very good at recording with people in the same room, and he was very nervous about that, and he was saying, well, I'll play a guitar solo on it, and Quincy's going, there's no place for a guitar solo on here, but just come down and sing, and he wouldn't do it. It's very interesting, but they're right, because they're trying to raise money, and they want Prince on there. And that's what they want, is to have Prince and Michael Jackson on the same thing would have been an incredible thing. Other things I noticed was Michael Jackson sings the first We Are the World on his own, and he recorded that earlier so it was out the way. When he gets in the studio and sings it, it's unbelievable. His pitching is unbelievable. He was such... These are geniuses. These are pop geniuses, and there's an idiosyncrasy and weirdness and incredible individuality about all of these artists that really, really impress me. Their talents, it's magnificent. It's a magnificent assembly of the best of the best. It's a joy. So with that, the truth is, I hate that bloody song. It's saccharine, it's maudlin, isn't it? I mean, do you think that? I mean, you know, do they know it's Christmas? It's got that incredible galloping drum beat from Phil Collins. You know, it doesn't sort of fall into the sort of schlock. It doesn't do what you would naturally expect. It's got a sort of Christmas overtones that are wound in brilliantly. It's just touched with a tiny smidgen of the new wave post-punk aesthetic. This one hasn't got that. It operates almost like it's like a big rock ballad, I suppose, but it's close to almost being like an anthem, isn't it? It's like anthemic. And that was decided. You know, Lionel Richie, you know, went over to Michael Jackson's house to write this tune with one idea in the mind, which was the tempo. Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. And it's interesting that that is the tempo, and it was set by him imagining Rule Britannia. Very interesting. So let's go into the second part of this. There is an essay on the internet, and I spotted this on Wikipedia. And when I read this essay, it really inspired me to do this video. It's by Russell Barker. I put a link in the description here, and it's called Disaster Appeal. And although this bloke is some sort of Marxist, postmodernist, Nietzschean philosopher type, you know, and I'm never too keen on them, I went, oh, you spotted something I've spotted. He spotted the fact that this is a point in cultural history that's important. And I thought, I wonder why he thinks it's important. And there's this, in amongst a lot of, you know, references to Nietzsche and the birth of tragedy. I think he calls the essay a birth of the postmodern tragedy. You know, there's a lot of references. It's quite interesting as well. Nietzsche felt that Western culture, under the influence of Christianity, had lost something that was apparent in the sort of the Greek world. It was embodied in the sort of comedy, tragedy dialectic of their theatre. And with the birth of tragedy, you saw certain things emerge, which then sort of dampened down humans' beings' will and makes them weak and conformist. Now, Greek tragedy is based upon a chorus. There would have been a chorus of people who would almost narrate this, and the chorus represented something, and the chorus would call for things almost like they're in the mind of the protagonist. But as time went on, the chorus becomes the doctrine, the mantra, the ideology, which encapsulates our culture. And he sees this going on with We Are the World, which features the protagonists, each one an individual saying their part, with the counter chorus intoning We Are the World, We Are the Future. And one of the things he posits is how the world, that this song ties into something which was emerging within popular music and within culture within the 1980s. And I think he's right. Popular music has its roots in Black American music. Now, I hate that term because actually it's a whole bunch of people in America creating this music. And America being what it is a democracy. And so we have the lowest to the highest in getting involved, and they're all bringing things in. Now, what's interesting about 20th century popular music is a certain phenomenological view of the world, which is informed by the sort of romantic poets of the 19th century and the way that echoes through arts. And then we come out of this into sort of this modernist, you know, technological age, post-World War I, where technology has been used to slaughter people on a huge level, and then we go into the jazz age, and we've now got trains and communication, radio recording, and you're going into this great thing, and within that, the communication systems that are changing create this thing called recorded music. And everything on my channel comes back to that moment when recorded music becomes a thing and the artist and the listener get separate. They were together once. And the thing is that this should be the end of the video, but I probably will explain this when I get to the end of the video. But let's bring it in here anyway. What we've got happening now is the death of that artist-listener dynamic. That's dying now. And we're going back to the way music always was, where the makers of the music and the audience are much more closer and mixed together. Most people would have had their involvement in music by, I don't know, going down their local tavern, and some folk singers would get up and they'd start playing, but they know the songs and they may sing along or clap along. They would go to church and they would sing the hymns, you know, they may even perform in church, you know. The only people who had this sort of audience creator was classical music, and I'm talking classical music, not the church music of Bach, but the music that's established the idea of the great artists through Beethoven, Mozart, through Chopin, you know, Liszt, Paganini. So these are all the cultural things that are happening at that time. And what recorded music does, as a sort of contrast to that, is it allows other voices to come through, primarily the audience, the voices of Black America. And these voices get lapped up by young people who want to hear songs at the start that are chaotic. I may do a video on sort of some of the dirty blues songs, because in the 1920s you've got records coming out that are so rude, you know, it's quite incredible, and people are picking up on this. Jazz and the blues starts off as a novelty, but it also starts off as being profane music, and the establishment looks down, and within that space, genius is allowed to come through. Very quickly, that music is assimilated by the business. We get the swing era, and the swing era establishes this era of popular music. Now people are selling records, they got radio stations, there's a ton of money, people are becoming superstars. Now, of course, back then, the superstars were white. You know, you had Duke Ellington and Count Basie, but the guys that are making money were Glenn Miller, Artie Shaw, and Benny Goodman. We also see the sort of shattering of these forms across American music, so they start to cross-pollinate. You know, gospel music, the country music, all these folk forms are informed by jazz and blues, and they all get sort of rhythmically fine. You know, all these folk forms, it's guitar, banjo, you know, jug, you know, well, that's what folk music is in America. Now suddenly everything's got drums and a bass on it. And then in the 1950s, we see another explosion, which is a little bit like the 1930s. Rock and roll comes out. And with this, we start to see artists crossing over. And Ray Charles, who's in this bloody, you know, on this record, and Chuck Berry are able to bring in elements of country music, folk music, gospel, jazz, blues. They bring them all together. And these voices come out again. And this coincides with the civil rights movement in America, but also it coincides with things like Stonewall, where, you know, gay people are now, you know, saying, well, we've got a voice as well. We want part of this. And this is what we get. And this drives it. Dylan comes out, informed by, you know, Marxist Woody Guthrie, who had taken American folk forms, put a political slant, and Dylan realized that he could do that with being a young person who was a voice of that new generation, post-war. We don't want to be like our parents. Look at what happened in the Second World War. We want a better future. We want a utopia. Let's emancipate black people, gay people, women. Let's do this. Let's question the nature of society. Maybe we can build a utopia. Woodstock, look at Woodstock. We were all getting on. It was wonderful, lovely. And the mainstream's going, what the hell's going on? These are freaks. What's happening? They're taking drugs. They're having free sex. And there's a dynamic. The young people are like going, no. And everything's like mind blowing because of that. You know, if you put on Born to Be Wild or Dark Side of the Moon or MC5 or Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin, And these people are making tons of money by the 70s, but it's all countercultural. My parents didn't know who Led Zeppelin were in the 1970s. They weren't on mainstream television. None of it was. This was a youth movement. And these people were dying left, right and centre. They were drug takers. They were like Nietzschean figures of chaos. That's what they were. Through this, we can see a direct line from Ray Charles through to James Brown through to Michael Jackson. But Michael Jackson has been, he's been bred to go into this music form. Now, Michael Jackson is about as weird as you can get, as we know. But he looks at black music and he realises with the album Off the Wall that he's now the biggest black star in the world. And Jackson's genius at that point is to go, well, I want to be the biggest star in the world. And I'm going to do this on MTV. And even though I'm a black man, I'm going to do it in this racist society. I'm going to become the first black superstar that's bigger than everybody else. And that forms the back of this. And Michael Jackson opens up the door for people like Prince and Tina Turner. They all come flooding through and they start to occupy, rather than being great black artists. I mean, we've got, artists had been like that before. We got Dionne Warwick on this record, who was that sort of, by exploring a more middle of the road, I suppose. Johnny Mathis had done the same thing. Smokey Robinson had done the same thing. I mean, he's on the bloody thing. Tears of a Clown is like a work of genius. They never gave him a line to sing anyway. That's by the by. So there's a shift at this point. There's a shift. And I think that push for acceptance of Michael Jackson, which had just happened with Thriller and thrown all these people, and the idea that, let's just have all the black artists up. No, let's bring everybody in. It's a beautiful thing. They all come in. And I cry because I can see how wonderful all this is. Now we're all the same. And he's right. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones who'll be. It's right. It's right. But the problem is, at this point, popular music is so powerful that these people are like the biggest artists in the world. Every one of them is selling millions of records. It's the top of the mountain. We all watch them, and what that record implores is to us as listeners to conform to what these people say. Do they know it's Christmas isn't like that? But what's interesting is, do they know this Christmas turns everybody on that single, whether it be Sting or Bob Geldof or U2, all those British artists come out of that being saviours of mankind rather than being drugged up rock stars that are good at writing songs. That idea emerges at this point. And We Are the World just takes that idea, but the chorus demands it of us. The chorus of We Are the World demands that us as the listener bow our heads down and do this. We are not worthy. Here's the great and the good. Look at them all. Oh my God. And I can't help but do it because they are legends. But the idea of me calling them a legend emerges then. That chorus of We Are the World, we are the future, we are the ones that will make a brighter day, so let's start giving. All that, those lines there and everything that's said is imploring us as the audience to look at them and think, well, they are the world. They are the future. We need to place our faith in them because they're leading us to the suddenly uplands of a utopia. And it's not a countercultural utopia. And the following year, Live Aid would act as an almost counterweight to Woodstock. Incredibly organised, incredibly corporate, everybody there because they knew they had to be there, and everybody being judged and going down in history with their input of what they did and how much money it made and how much they saved the world. Rock musicians and pop musicians thought that they could save the world, and they sort of could at that time. If you were to assemble the biggest pop stars in the world at the moment and get them to do a single, it just would be like a drop in the ocean compared to this. They did have that power. This is what's really hard to get across, is on the other side of this record, We Are the World, our pop stars then demanded us to basically listen to them unquestioningly, to switch off our own thoughts, to conform to an ideology based upon kindness. It starts to become, it's the first sprouting of the ideology that we are the world, we are all one, we should be looking after everybody. You know, the idea that everybody's a rainbow and we're all here to make a brighter day starts to get enshrined in dogma. And this dogma, you know, enters absolutely everything, and it becomes corporate, it becomes industrialized, it becomes part of the university, the academies, it becomes part of our education. It's in every single film, it's in every single story. There is a sick saccharineness about mainstream culture after We Are the World. There's a shift. If you look at films before then, those films are edgy. After them, it's a lot of Home Alones and a lot of, you know, nice parenthood. Steve Martin's daughter's getting married. They live in a house that's bigger than a bloody small village, you know. And all these things, the ideas are laid at that point. And then what happens is these ideas become more and more sophisticated. And that elite that demands us to look at them and do this, get better at covering it up. Better and better at covering it up. And so the genuine egos checked at the door that we see on that, the fact that if you put Tina Turner in a room and she's in there with Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan and Ray Charles, she has to go, right, it's not all about me. We see that on there, but then that gets formalized and fake. And now, you know, most celebrities now are so brilliant at putting that on, to acting that they are not who they are. The elites, the billionaires, the people who are in control of everything, the people that are there as the front face of a narrative which, with the advent of the internet and the breakdown of this sort of postmodernist epoch, we now distrust, because behind all this is P. Diddy and the Freakoffs and Harvey Weinstein and the corruption that exists in our entertainment industry. We live in an age where Ricky Gervais a few years ago got up and basically stood in front of them all and just insulted them. And because of their fake self, you know, modesty, they ought to all smile along and go, yeah, you know. But inside they were fuming because he had called them all out. Now, those people in that room that were all acting like they were the greatest people in the world and they were trying to save the world. What was Ray Charles like as a person? You know, what was Michael Jackson like as a person? Tina Turner had gone through hell because her husband, Ike Turner, who is as great as Ray Charles and Chuck Berry in terms of the development of this music, had beaten her senseless and basically acted in a terrible way. These people weren't some angels descending to earth to show us the way. They were flawed the same as us. And having access to all that power, I'm sure that their lives were not as moral as they would like to for us to have thought. They were human beings in the end. They're all human beings. But the idea that these people live on Mount Olympus, and the idea that they are sort of perfect in some way and they are the arbiters of moral virtue, is born here. And it is precisely that has died. And the reason why it has died is because these people's power was for them to, when they did something, for the whole world to look. Live Aid is historic because it came at a time where the technology was great enough that you could broadcast a concert live to the whole world, and yet it was primitive enough that the technology to do that was in the hands of the elites. And so only they could organise it and only they could galvanise it. And the way they galvanised it was based upon the cult of celebrity. That by this point, it wasn't the ability to sell records or all the millions you had in the bank, you know, the fact that you were going on tour and you being bloody jumbo jet, you know, all the stuff that Roger Waters sings about in the track Money. It wasn't about that. What had happened is the very thing itself, status, had become the currency of Western democracies. And so all this could happen because they had these people agreeing to do it. And these people played it and they knew it. And they came out at the back end of this with that currency elevated. It was money in the bank, but in the status bank. That's what we see going on with We Are the World. And when we look at that and we see the breakdown of that now, you know, with the advent of the internet, which democratizes all these sorts of things, the ideology that exists out there that goes, well, we're the ones who know what's right or wrong, that then shifts and it turns into a monster. And that monster is the cancel culture, with people say, well, I don't think anybody should be allowed to say things. I don't think everybody should be allowed to voice their opinion. Some people have bad opinions. They need to be shut up. You know, we can't have people just saying what they want and thinking what they want. It needs to be controlled. We need to control things, you know. We know the best way to the world to be. The best way should be like this, you know. We should all be holding hands and, you know, building a brighter day, just you and me. That's what we should all be doing. Not, servicing hate, you know, not promulgating, you know, hate speech and all this stuff. It's terrible. You know, these people need to be controlled. And people see through it. And people turn around and say, well, why should I listen to you? What's so good about you? Why are you morally better than me? Well, because I hate racism. So I hate racism. I know, but you're not saying it in the right way. It has to be said in a certain way. There's an ideology here. There's a dogma here. That has broken down. That has broken down, and it is going. And we are going to spin off into a chaos in which some of those bad ideas that the civil rights movement, the rock and roll, that the hippie generation, that Woodstock, some of those ideas that were checked are going to come flooding back in. And what we're going to be left with is simply the postmodern gaze that we all have, where we can't help but look at these billionaires and think, when they sing We Are the World, that they're not talking about me or you. They are talking about themselves. And that's what makes this record appalling. It did the job. It raised millions and millions, around about 200 million. Now, I know everybody in the chat will now go, yeah, but where did that money go? Blah, blah, blah. That's the postmodern gaze. That's what we're all in. That is what we are all in now. That's the bottom of the other side of the mountain. We are in the bottom of the other. I'm not interested in this. I know, as predictable as it will be, anybody who hasn't watched the video to this point will be going, yeah, but where do the billions go? Just into the hands of, you know, people, you know, at the top of the tree of privilege. They'll be talking within all these terms, unaware that they're a part of the system like anybody else. The ability to think originally, which is the ability to think as an individual, embodied in everybody in that room, and their genius and beauty, which has got nothing to do with their moral beliefs about the world. What I cried at, what I was moved at, was the elevation of individuality and humanity. And the fact that American popular music was always about saying, this is the music, but you don't have to conform. Your voice doesn't have to sound like an opera voice. You don't have to play like classical violin with a vibrato a certain way. That we have created an incredibly sophisticated music form where 40 singers can get in a room and sing together, because a producer like Quincy Jones, who is in the tradition of a Duke Ellington, is able to weave all that and create an arrangement where the very individuality of Tina Turner and Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan is weaved into this. And in that, it represents how individuals can work together as a group to create something. And in that aspect, which is which is pre-postmodern and post-postmodern. It's the very aesthetic I'm trying to push here. So people go, yeah, that's right. Andy's right. It is sophisticated. It's not naive. Those musicians, the beauty of them was in their individuality. They could have been the worst sex fiend, drug-taking monsters. You know, but every time when one of them sings, a little part of a story is told. And it's a story of what America's based upon. And what America's based upon is a noble virtue. And we need to champion it at this time, because without championing that and believing in that and seeing the beauty in that, we will lose everything. Now, I came into here with these two ideas. I knew there was a dialectic, and I know I was going to spend an hour trying to, bring those two dialectics together. I think I have. I wasn't prepared for this. But the truth is, the answer here is, it's a schlocky song. The lyrics can be seen as being so, rotten when you think about these millionaires preaching to you in the way I've described it all. And that Jason Barker, the sort of Nietzschean Marxist who wants to, how old's this guy? I looked him up, he was born in 1971. This is probably the biggest light that's been shined on this bloke. And it's a brilliant essay, and I was really inspired by it. So if he does end up watching this, thank you. And it's really great. And if he wants to come on and channel and talk about this more, I would love to have him on. But I'm adding something to it. Maybe we need to actually go back to what that music form is and what it's based upon. And we have to look at it, and we have to focus on the individuality and how that's operating. We have to look, and in that room, it's Stevie Wonder. He's a troublemaker. I mean, he's a genius, could play everything. He's an incredible singer, incredible songwriter. I mean, he sat there, he didn't give a toss. He's just got a big smile on his face. He's a troublemaker. Lionel Richie, these three people that created this. I'll put Quincy Jones in there. Quincy Jones is like the great director of it all. But these three people, this trinity of Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson, they all represent something. That's the genius of this. Lionel Richie is like a brilliant songwriter, straight down the line. He's like the sort of Apollo in this. And if we look at Stevie Wonder, he's like the Dionysius in this. He's a Dionysian, and he's there causing trouble and mischief and celebration and humour and laughing. That's what he is. He's one of those artists that just delights in the beauty of play. Michael Jackson is the hero, isn't he? He's the young hero. Michael Jackson was the youngest person in that room, I think. I've tried to work this out, and I've gone through everybody. He was born in 1958. This was made in 1985. So Michael Jackson at this point is 26, 27 years old. Now, Harry Belafonte, the old man in there, he is 1 year older than me at that point. He's 58. Ray Charles is younger than me in that video. They're all incredibly young. And in that, we see how young popular music was, in a way. And in the message of popular music, Harry Belafonte is seen like an elder statesman, and they all do go, let's respect the old man. Quincy Jones, I think, was born in 1933, so he was 52 when he made that, 5 years younger than me. The world's changed. The world's changed. We need to get back to that spirit where people are allowed to shine through, whoever they are. Whatever their opinion is, however dodgy they are as characters, we need to let them shine through, and we need to have that balance back in our cultural life between virtuosity and individuality, individual expression. We need to remember that again. I'm too old, I think, to even recognise it. But I have a lot of knowledge of this history. So even though I may not recognise it when it comes along, at least I can do the Gandalf and say, but that's what it could be. And that our new hero needs to scuttle off and find it. The new artists that will come along, the new Michael Jackson, the new Harry Potter, the new Luke Skywalker. And I am now just the custodian of this sort of wisdom, but stuck in my ways. But I know it's there. I know it's there. And that's what my job is to do here. Oh, you see, I'm doing it all now, Mount Olympus, Andy. That's what my job is. My job is not to do that. My job is to come on here and just rant on and say whatever I want. Hopefully somebody might get something out of it. Stop being so bloody pretentious. And in that there, I will end. Because that dialectic, that thing that we all exist in that is where the worth is. Citrus shield, orange carrot, mandarin lemon and ginger. Need the vitamins. Lovely, finished. Lovely. What a lovely day it is. Now I've got I'm getting a bit dehydrated, mouth was drying up, so. Anyway, you don't need to know all that. You don't need to know all that, but I've told you anyway. So, in the end, I'm at the end of the video. And that's that. I feel like I have got to the end. I don't feel like I've got to the end, do I? I haven't quite nailed it. What am I missing? Let's end as we started. Like and subscribe the video. In fact, put on a like. Let's get the right key. Why can't I hear this? Put on a like. I think I got a different key and I think I'm hearing the tune in my head. Put on a like. Too low for me. Put on a subscribe. You can become a Patreon or a member on this channel. You are not a good person unless you stick a like on this. Why don't you put a comment on here and make a brighter day for me? Because I need you to kiss my ass. So yeah, put nice comments on, tell me how great I am and all that bit, and I can go home, the creative artist, wanting to do something great, but also wanting to be loved by everybody. Thank you.